Okay, good morning. We are continuing Ta'arobis. Yoreh Deah, Kuf, Tet. Okay, just a quick recap on something we mentioned before, just to make sure it's really clear. It's mutter to smell any machal iser if the iser is only iser to eat it, but it's mutter behana. Right? That was pretty much clear. The one possible exception, probable not, but possible, is stam yeno that we mentioned.
Vadai,
Basar b'chalav. Right, but I'm talking about anything that's mutter behana. You never have to worry about smelling. So people discuss, let's say, cigarettes, cigars, or all these other vapes, whatever you want to use, or whatever your issue is. Anytime the item is made from something that's asr behana, obviously it's asr to smell. Anytime it's mutter behana, but asr to eat, you're allowed to do it. And right, there may be other isurim, right, nezek to your body, v'chule, but just as far as the issue of, yeah. Okay. Fine. Let's go on. We are on Kuftet. We were discussing the difference of yavesh b'yavesh, min b'mino, is you need, it could be chad betray. What about lach? So it has to be shishim. So what's the difference? We said this yesterday. Why does lach belach, even min b'mino, you don't go by rov? It has to be shishim. So the Rosh and the Maharam say it's because it's a gzeira of she'eno mino. Eno mino is all based on tam, so of course it has to be batal b'shishim. So lach belach is a lot closer, it's a lot more confusing. That if you allow lach belach with min b'mino, you're going to end up, if you allow that just by rov, you're going to end up making a mistake b'she'eno mino. That's the reason for these iser derabanan. And the Rashba says, because with the lach belach, it's all mixed in together. So every time you take a bite, you're going to be eating iser. So that doesn't feel right. So therefore, it's aser midirabanan. However, when it comes to, but when you have pieces, yavesh b'yavesh, theoretically it's possible. You take one piece at a time, one bite at a time, and it could be that you're eating 100% heter. So therefore, it doesn't feel so weird. It doesn't feel so bad. So lo gazur rabbanan in that case. Okay, let's go to Seif Bet inside. Yavesh b'yavesh. So you have two relatively dry items. Obviously, there's moisture inside, right? We're not talking about dried out food, but solids. Yavesh b'yavesh nitbatel chad betray, and it's 2-1. That's the classic scenario. So it could be 51-50, but it's chad betray. Im bishlan kulan ke'echad. Now, you want to cook them all together. So they all got cooked together. So now we have an issue. Afilu lechol kol echad b'fnei atzmo aser im ein sham shishim. Aha. So now you cooked it in a liquid. Mipnei sheharotev benotein tam. The rotev is able to impart the flavor through the medium of the liquid. It's able to impart flavor from one to another. V'tam v'nivla b'chatichos, and then it gets absorbed into each other. Right, so it becomes like a yavesh belach. It's no longer a case of yavesh b'yavesh per se, because you're cooking them together and the iser is getting transferred from one to another. So you can't do that. Even though you have 2-1, you can't cook them together. Even though we already said it's batal. We already said you can eat them, whether it's all at once or separately or other people. That was the previous seif. But so here we are. But let's say you want to cook them all together. So if there's shishim in there, normally we said but here it already became batal chad betray, so it's not a problem. Everything's batal, everything's mutter. So you're allowed to cook them together if it's batal b'shishim with the added liquid or vegetables, whatever's in the pot. But let's say you don't have shishim. It's a big piece of meat, and it's not shishim keneged the rest of the pot. Ve'ein sham shishim. What are you allowed? Are you allowed to cook them? So the Mechaber writes, mutter, 100% mutter to cook it if laharbot aleim kedei shir shishim. You have to now add more water, more vegetables, more kosher meat, whatever you want to do, add to it to make sure it's that Isser is Batel B'Shishim. And then you can cook them all together. And there's no Isser over here, Mevatel Isser Lechatchila, because you're not Mevatel any Isser. The Isser is already Mutter. It's already 100% Mutter. Every piece by itself is 100% Mutter. And what you're doing now is just adding to prevent a problem of making it Isser. But as it is, it's already Mutter, no problem. Okay. Haga. Now, V'yesh Omrim is going to be a more Mekel opinion. Right now we just said if you have 2 to 1, and really you want to just eat them, it's Bata. But you want to cook them, and there's going to be a transfer of flavor, so then it has to be Shishim. So the Rama writes, V'yesh Omrim Di'im Noda HaTa'arovet. If before you cook, Kodem Shnitz Bashlu B'yachad, before you cook it, you see the 3 pieces, and you look at them and you say, oh, 1 was Isser, 2 are Mutter, the whole thing is kosher now. If you looked at it and then you established that now they're all have a din of 100% Mutter, then Hakol Shari. Now you're allowed to go and actively cook them all together, even though they're going to impart. Now they're not really imparting flavor because we're talking about a case of min b'mino. But you're allowed to actually cook them together, even though it's not batel v'shishim. De'ein chozrin v'ne'esarim me'achar shenitbashel batel b'yavesh. Because once it became batel, then it's mutter, and it doesn't become aser after the fact. Once it's mutter, it's mutter. There are cases when it does, but in this case, we say it doesn't. V'makom hesed. Yesh lismach adivrei hamakilin ulahatir. So the Rama says, so this is the opinion of the Rosh, who says once it's nefach to mutter, eino chozer v'nesar, it doesn't become aser anymore. And right, that's even if we're talking about dinei deraisa, isurim deraisa, doesn't matter. Once it's mutter, it's mutter. And the Gra points out, we saw this, in Sadi Tet, over there in Vav. Actually, we saw there, it kind of goes the other way. But here, in this case, he just points out, it must be a case that we allow it. We allow it to stay mutter according to the Rosh, in a case where it's still on a deraisa level, mutter. Let's say you have chad betray, and then you end up with getting more isser added, even though those 3 became all mutter, and then you get more isser added, and there's really more isser there than heter. It's no longer batel berov on a deraisa level. Then he says, you are chozer v'near, and it does become aser. Because we're talking about dinei derabanan. Dinei derabanan, we have wiggle room to play with. What? Would the Rama agree to that? I think he's explaining the Rama. Okay. So in order for it to be mutter, again, it has to be batel berov, min b'mino, and right. But if it's she'eno mino or a din daraisa, that's the case in Sadi Tet. If it's b'she'eno mino, then we do say chozer v'neor, because the flavor's there. So that's the svara, because and again, it basically has to do with the svara, the flavor there, or dinei daraisa. That's how the Gra explains.
And also seems to be adding to the requirement of Deah.
That's the case. That's the case. You have to know that. You have to know it became batel before you cook it. Right. That everyone agrees. Okay, because it only becomes heter when you know about it. And then comes the sugya of, do we say chozer v'nei or v'nesar afterward? Does it rehappen? Okay. Does it belong here? No, it belongs later on. Okay, that's there. I think we're done. I think that covers this siman. Okay, let's start Kuf Yud. Kuf Yud. just to point out, right, so the Ramah is Machmer Lachatchila, but B'makom Hefsid B'di'evet, he's Meiko, like the Rosh. The Kaf HaChaim is Machmer against the Ramah. He says the Shulchan Aruch is Machmer, even Behefsid Meruba. But of course, Lamaisa, every case has to be judged in its situation. Okay, Siman Kuf Yud. Din Safik Trefo She'ira Babasa. Okay, so now this is going to be, I guess, some different cases of Safik. How do we handle it? Okay, I'll just point out Kuf Yud is you can spend weeks on Kuf Yud, but we will not. So we will get a basic understanding. And okay, let's start with Aleph. Davar Chashuv, Oser B'mino. Anything that's considered very important, very chashuv, it's oser b'mino b'kol shehu. Even if it's min b'mino, and even if it's b'kol shehu, and then it's aser. It's a davar chashuv, and it's not batal, right? It's not batal b'shishi. V'heim, right? And it wouldn't be batal b'elef as well. V'heim shiva dvarim. So the Shulchan Aruch says the classic 7 cases. We're going to see it depends on the place and the time. But the 7 classical cases that we have are Ve'eluheim, Egoze, Perach. It's these Egozim from this place called Perach. So apparently they were probably considered the most important special nuts of the time. And if you get it, it's like a big wow. And it's a statement if you give it as a gift. And so therefore it's a davar chashuv. The Rimonei Badan, same thing, they have special pomegranates imported from Dan. The Chaviot Stumot. And so these are, the Shach points out, specifically large, big barrels, not small ones, but these are big ones. And regular small ones would be batel. Again, I'm not sure exactly how you define which is big and small. Okay. And they need to be closed. Shach again says, but if they're open, even yei nesach, they're betaling, because they're not considered chashuv. Okay. The chelfot teradin. I forgot how to translate this. Anyways, it's things that we're not so familiar with, or that these 7 examples do not necessarily apply to us anyway. I saw some interesting translations, so I don't know, we'll keep going. But Kal Chikru, these are the roots of radishes. Dalat, Yavanit, Greek, gourd, I don't know what these are. V'ki karot shel Baal Habayit. And then, so loaves that you make, you bake in the house. V'chein Baalei Chaim Chashuvim Heim. Living animals are also considered chashuvim. Ve'enam betalim, and they are not batal. Aval shar dvarim afal pi shedarkan limanot. But anything else, even though it's a davar shebeminyan, you sell them, you buy them, you count them, it doesn't matter. They're all mutter, they're all batal. They're batal berov, or whatever the situation is. Maybe shishim. Hare elu olim b'shiuram. And it's every item has its own din, what the shear is. That's what we just said. Okay. Right? Bakery bread is different. Right. The Shach says it depends on the times. It could be for your bakery, it's considered chashuv. It's generally considered a davar shebeminyan. I'm not so sure about considered chashuv though. Okay. Hard to know exactly, and how to apply these halachas. Haga v'yesh omrim the kol davar shebeminyan the hainu shedarko limnoso tamid eino batel v'chen noagim. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch is pretty clear. Davar shebeminyan is batel in its regular bittul shir, whatever it is. The Ramah says anything that's davar shebeminyan also is a problem. For example, turn the page. Eggs, could be whole eggs. It could be It could be whole eggs, whether it's raw or hard-boiled, and it could be even just the yolks. I've seen written that even just the yolks themselves can be considered a davar shebeminyan, although I'm not sure about that. Generally speaking, when these things are davar, Psakim Mechuvos writes about it, or others write about it, that if it's something that's not whole anymore, then it loses its chashivus. So davar shebeminyan means it's in its whole state. So I don't know. I'll leave the yolks as a question mark, and scrambled eggs for sure is oh, that was okay. Okay, that's only by whole eggs. I'm going to take that back. What I saw about yolks was for the halacha of chad betray. So they consider, I got mixed up. They consider yolks, the yellow yolks by themselves, as davar yavesh. Because again, davar yavesh, I was mixing up the halachot, davar yavesh means solids. It has nothing to do with dry and moist. So whole eggs, identified, exactly, solids. But it doesn't mean dry. So that's why whole eggs and yolks are considered davar yavesh, but scrambled eggs are considered, if it's eggs that are all scrambled together, it's generally going to be considered davar lach. Obviously, an omelet could be considered a yavesh. Anyway, so that's that halacha. Sorry, I got mixed up. But anyway, so whole things that are b'minyan are b'minyan. Okay, let's continue. So the Ramah points out, though, when it's davar sheb'minyan, it's when it's always sold davar sheb'minyan, not usually. The Maharshal and many Achronim go with the Maharshal that are machmer, at least lechatchila, without hefsed maruba, is even if it's the derech, usually. Now, it doesn't have to always be. So how consistent, so that's a machlokas Ramah and Marshal. And anyway, so the Ramah writes, v'chenoagin, so davar shebeminyan, right, whether it's always or usually, that's where machma for the Ramah writes. At least for the certainly for Ashkenazim, it seems to be by Sfardim the halacha is. It's not an issue, but I'll just point out, there is a question, and some wonder exactly, according to the Shulchan Aruch, what to do, because by eggs, he seems to count it also as a davar shebeminyan in Pei Vav, Ayin Sham. The question's better than the answer. So let's keep going. Ha de davar chashuv eno batel eno ela midarabanan. Now, we just said all this about davar chashuv, davar shebeminyan, all these things. Again, it's similar to what we learned before about all the other exceptions that are not batel b'shishim or batel b'rov. It's this whole, all these things are only midarabanan, because it has special chashivus. As therefore, ve'azlinan bisfeiko lekula. So anytime you have a suffix, again, to be clarified, it's the only time he's a mekel if it's not by any kind of a suffix. Many times you go lechumra. What does he mean? Right away you jump lakula. It's if you don't know if you define this item as a davar chashuv or not. If it's an item you're not sure if it should be considered davar chashuv, so generally you can go lakula and you can be, and then you go after the batel barov or batel b'shisha. Okay. Kol davar shu chashuv. Then he continues. Now anything that's considered chashuv, eitzel b'nei makom makomos. So really it depends on your locale. The time and the place matters, and how you define what's davar chashuv. Kegon, egozi perach rimone badan be'eretz Yisrael. Be'otam azmanim hu oser b'kol shehu. So in those days they oser b'kol shehu. Lefi chashivuto, because they were important. Be'osel makom be'oto zman. In that time, in that place. V'lo huskuru elu, and these were only the examples that were mentioned. Ela lefi shehein osrim b'kol shehen b'kol makom. Because these were the ones that were the most meforsam everywhere to be the ones that are the prime examples that everybody agreed were a davar chashuv. But but other things that we live with in our time can also be a davar chashuv. I think. I'm not sure if he's saying they're absolutes. In the era when they were listed, they were recognized by all the countries. But I don't, nowadays it could be, I don't think so. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think so.
It's not stereo. He's saying
For their time.
churches is recognized as these are, but they can be local too.
Okay.
These were mentioned because they weren't local, they were global.
I'm just going to mention a couple examples. We will discuss it afterwards. I just want to mention a couple examples from Psakim Mechuvos, where he writes, Davar Shebemishkal is not a problem. Just to be clarified, it's only when you count them out. So therefore, he points out, a lot of things, you buy them in single packages. But the essence, it's not sold by the minyan, by the number, you're selling it by the volume or the weight. It just comes in packages. So therefore, if you're buying drinks, you sell them by the liter or gallon or so whatever. So those are not davar shebeminyan, those are davar shebemishkal, and it doesn't have this chumrah of davar chashuv. And you're buying sugar and flour, all these things. It's all by weight. You're buying cans. Okay, so that's that. And then just some examples he gives of davar shebeminyan. Again, it's not clear, but I'll just rattle off some ideas. Is eggs, loaves of bread, davar shebeminyan. Maybe davar chashuv if it's baked in your house, but okay, davar shebeminyan, buying pizza or even slices of pizza. He writes. Again, not everything's always agreed by everybody, but I'll just give a couple more. When you buy an esrog, okay, when you're buying them for the mitzvah, not to eat. So you buy them by the individual esrog. That's a davar chashuv. But that may be a davar chashuv l'kuli, but probably is. But God, not just because of davar shebeminyan. Clothing. So again, clothing could be davar chashuv, and it's certainly a davar. I think it's usually davar shebeminyan. At least that's what he writes also. Okay, fine. Let's stop with that. Let me continue a little more. Fine. Well, Teisha Chaniyos, we'll just start that tomorrow. Bet. I think we're at the end. Let's just read one more. Ba'alei Chaim, shenit arvu ba'acherim, v'nishchatu, batel chashivutan. So we just said, live Ba'alei Chaim are considered davar chashuv. And so, right, they're not going to be batel. But what if they get shechted? So now they no longer have the status of Ba'alei Chaim, and now they become batel barov, or whatever it is, ubetelim. Vehu shenishchatu b'shogeg. That's only if it got shechted by accident. You can't have a group. They're all alive. Well, it's batel, and you know one of them is aser. So what do? You shech them all b'mezid, in order to make them now they're not alive anymore. So to do that lechatchila you're not allowed to do. So then it's only if it happened and then you discovered the it's already shechted and now you have the situation. So then it's matter. V'davka ba'alei chaim ktanim shein reil mitzchad beil achar shkeitatan. So the Ramah just points out again. Look back in Hilchos reil yischabed. So then it depends. If it's too small, then it won't be. But if it's roish yischabed, then you can still have. Even though it's not Ba'alei Chaim and it's not batel, it could be not batel for other reasons. Again, we learned about if it has its hair, if it's still completely intact, so then it's not. Anyway, ayin sham for those heterian. I think we'll stop.